How far are we from where you actually saw this thing?
Right here, about 100 yards.
We knew it was about to run off, and I was getting nervous. It turns, and I shot it right there.
The woods are full of mysteries, and Bigfoot is one of the biggest. For decades, people have searched for proof of its existence. In today's video, we're diving into 6 of the creepiest Bigfoot trail cam footage you must watch. These chilling moments could change the way you see the unknown. Get ready for some unsettling footage that may leave you questioning what's lurking in the shadows. A team of Bigfoot researchers travels to Texas to follow up on credible sightings shared at a recent town hall. Their first stop is to meet with James and Carrie Hendricks, a couple whose roadside sighting from 2003 is as strange as it is terrifying. The team hopes revisiting the site will reveal more about the creature's behavior, but they're not prepared for the chilling details the couple is about to share. Arriving at the remote stretch of road, the couple guided the investigators through their encounter.
We were driving along coming from this direction right over here. It was just before twilight. When I came around the curve, I saw an animal running on 2 legs. As he got up to the edge of the pavement, he looked at me and then dropped down on all 4s, and he crossed right in front of me. Came up on the other side, squatted down and looked back over its shoulder at me. He stood up, stepped into this area and headed that direction.
Once on the other side, it squatted down, glanced back one final time, and disappeared into the trees. They recount seeing a creature about 5 feet tall, with a stocky, muscular build, reddish-brown hair, and a flat face with unnervingly human-like features.
At the town I'll be, there were some tribe members that invited me to come down to the reservation and do some squatching. I ran into some natives this morning that told me about a Bigfoot-type structure behind one of the houses where they were hearing vocalizations. I gotta check this.
While one part of the team investigates the roadside crossing, another investigator, Bobo, heads deep into the Alabama Coshata Reservation, a known hotspot for strange activity. Pushing deep into the woods, he stumbled upon a crudely built shelter.
This is not a natural structure. This is definitely squatchy. This side's totally open, but this side, I imagine that used to be blocked. So I think this ambush structure was built here because right here is a game trail, a well-used game trail. Just a little highway.
The terrifying realization dawns on him. This isn't a shelter. It's an ambush point built by an intelligent predator to stalk its prey. The investigation's final and most chilling case takes Cliff to meet Jeff Stewart, a man with a story so extraordinary it challenges belief. Jeff claims he had an encounter with a Sasquatch in broad daylight that dropped out of a tree just 5 feet away from him. At the location, Jeff relives the terrifying moment he heard a loud crash right behind him.
How far are we from where you actually saw this thing?
Right here, about 100 yards.
That one?
That's it, right there. Up in where you can see the natural saddle is where it was sitting.
So you didn't actually see it up there though, right?
Never saw it until it hit the ground.
So now that we're actually here at the location, tell me everything that happened. Like what happened before, during, and after the encounter.
He spun around to see a creature on the ground, having seemingly just fallen from the branches above. In the few seconds they stood face to face, Jeff saw its features in stunning detail.
So, using this opportunity, what did you notice about its face?
There was no visible hair in the face or on the face anywhere other than around the mouth. There was very, very fine, what I would call baby hair.
Okay.
The skin was dark, but it was real shiny looking, almost like oily looking. Its mouth was open just a little bit.
Okay.
That was the only noise that I heard, was it actually.
The face was hairless, with dark, shiny skin that looked almost oily. The creature was so close, he could hear its faint guttural breathing. As Jeff fumbled for his camera, the creature fled into the woods. He managed to take a picture, and although the image is blurry, it captures a large, dark figure disappearing into the brush. For the investigator, Jeff's voice turns his doubt into a chilling belief. he may have just listened to one of the most compelling close encounter accounts ever recorded. Our next story begins with a father and his son, Jack, seeking a peaceful retreat at a secluded campsite far from the rest of the campground. They arrived in the evening, set up their campfire, and settled into their familiar routine, expecting a relaxing night under the stars.
We got there probably about 7:30 that night. Jack and I were very relaxed. We had our campfire going. We were settling into our normal routine.
Do you smell that?
But as they sat by the fire, an unsettling aroma began to fill the air, a strong metallic smell, like fresh blood. Unsure of its origin, but growing concerned, the father decided to investigate, believing it might be a recent deer nearby.
It was very odd. As a note of transparency, I'm not a kind of person that I get feelings in the woods. I'm not that person that says, I feel like I'm being watched. But I started smelling that blood, and I started for the first time ever getting a creeped out feeling.
In a heart-stopping moment, he turned back towards the camp and froze. His son's eyes were wide with terror. Standing behind him was a massive black humanoid figure that towered over him, its form so large it nearly blocked out the light from their campfire.
At that moment in time, he turned and looked at me, and his eyeballs went boom.
I turn around, I see my dad, and behind him was this very large black humanoid figure. It almost entirely blacked out our campfire. When something that's 9-10 feet tall, weighs almost 1,000 pounds, is no more than 10 feet away from you, it's scary.
The creature was no more than 10 feet away, a silent, menacing giant that could have ended his life in an instant. Yet, it did nothing but pass by them and disappear into the darkness. Stunned and terrified, they began searching for any sign of what they had just witnessed.
We started looking around for evidence like footprints or tree breaks, structures.
We saw behind the brush pile where long grass had been pressed down, like something had been squatting there watching us.
And we figured out that it had been crouching down behind that brush pile, waiting for us to move out of the way or leave. It would have had to have been very close to our campsite.
Their search led them to a large brush pile right next to their campsite. Behind it, they found long grass pressed down, revealing the spot where the creature had been silently watching them. The father, now deeply concerned for his son's safety, knew they couldn't stay a moment longer, but the nightmare was far from over.
Over there.
I popped my spotlight on and I just shined it up into the woods in front of me, and probably 35 feet away, I see these two big blue eyes looking at me from between two trees.
As the father shined his spotlight into the woods ahead, light hit two large blue eyes staring back at him from between the trees. In a moment of terrifying curiosity, Jack ran after it into the darkness.
What are we doing? Hey, Jack!
And I ran after it to try to see it myself. I was really terrified at that moment, but I wanted to go investigate and see what I could find.
So I'm hollering, Jack, Jack.
There's something out here, predatorial in nature, that it is not afraid to kill.
Overcome with panic, the father screamed his son's name, desperate to get to him before the creature did. As he finally caught up to Jack, who breathlessly described seeing the creature's massive back and shoulders as it darted away.
He goes, Dad, I saw it. And I said, what did you see? And he's described the back side of the creature, shoulders and the upper back, as it darted into a brush line leading into the forest.
Though they managed to escape physically unharmed, the psychological scars of that night would surely remain. The sheer size and proximity of the creature left them with a chilling understanding of their own vulnerability in the wild. One thing is certain, they were intruders in its territory, and they will never forget the night they came face to face with the terrifying reality of what roams the woods after dark. Welcome to Cabin in the Woods, a channel that dives into the eerie world of folklore and unsolved mysteries. The creator tackles long-standing enigmas, none more famous than the Patterson Gimlin film. While many call it a man in a suit, he presents chilling evidence that what Patterson and Gimlin captured in 1967 was no hoax. Step by step, he unveils evidence that forces viewers to confront a much darker reality. The analysis begins by challenging everything we know about human movement. The creator explains how the creature's distinct bent-knee propulsion and gait would be impossible for any human, especially in a bulky suit.
First of all, we have biomechanics and gait. According to anthropologist and primate expert Dr. Jeff Meldrum, the bent-knee propulsion that we see from the creature in the film would be impossible, or at the very least highly impractical for a human being. We're just not built to propel ourselves forward with that bent-knee stride that you see from the creature in the film.
He then highlights the stride length, measured at 41 inches from the footprints left behind. This isn't just a long step, it's a smooth, powerful gait that even a tall human would struggle to mimic without looking awkward, starkly contrasting the graceful, natural movement captured in the grainy footage.
The footprints cast by Patterson and Gimlin after they filmed the creature had a 41-inch stride length on average, which is a much longer stride than an average human could comfortably copy, even a taller than average human. I mean, I'm 6 feet tall. I attempted some 41-inch strides before making this video. I just wouldn't look nearly as graceful as the subject of the film does, even at my height and with rather long legs. It's just not doable for human beings.
The investigation then moves from the creature's walk to the very anatomy beneath its skin, or fur. We are shown that in the stabilized footage, one can clearly see muscles flexing and moving with each step.
We're pretty good at making realistic monkey and monster suits nowadays, but we still haven't mastered the ability to recreate authentic muscle movement, the flexing and changing of shape and hardness of muscles that we see beneath the skin of real creatures, ourselves included. But in the Patterson Gimlin film, you can clearly see that we have flexing calf muscles as the creature propels itself forward with each footstep. We see flexing thigh muscles, we see glute muscles changing and flexing.
The narrator highlights the visible flexing of calf, thigh, and even back muscles, a level of detail that special effects experts of the time, and even today, would find nearly impossible to recreate in a suit. The argument is simple and terrifying. Suits don't have muscles, but living creatures do.
In fact, according to two different veteran Hollywood special effects specialists, Bill Munns and John Chambers, the sort of muscle flexing beneath the skin quality that we see in the Patterson Gimlin film would be extremely difficult and most likely impossible for a human being in a suit to replicate.
Next, the analysis focuses on the creature's proportions, which defy human anatomy.
It's obvious to anyone who has seen the film that the arms of the subject are a lot longer in proportion to its body length than the arms of a human. In fact, several recreation attempts with humans in suits have failed for just this reason, because the arms of the human in the suit always look comically short in comparison to the actual Patterson Gimlin film.
Its arms are far longer in proportion to its body than a human's, and they swing with a natural smoothness that suggests real limbs, not prosthetics hidden in sleeves. The entire skeletal structure, from its torso to leg ratio to the length of its limbs, points not to a disguised man, but to something else entirely.
The next reason the film is authentic is the behavioral realism we see from the creature. If it were just a man in a suit, he probably wouldn't have acted so nonchalant. But instead, we have this creature slowly, nonchalantly walking away from the camera, turning once to glance back at the men filming her.
The most unsettling evidence lies in the creature's behavior. This isn't the act of an actor playing a monster. It's the instinctive response of a wild animal caught off guard, viewing the humans not as a threat, but as something to observe before slipping back into the safety of the wilderness.
To put it another way, the creature's body language in the film doesn't seem forced. It seems natural. It really does appear like an animal in its native environment, moving easily and comfortably through that environment.
Finally, the creator dismantles any lingering doubt by listing the numerous respected scientists, physical anthropologists, primatologists, and biomechanics experts who have studied the film and concluded that the subject is a genuine, non-human primate.
Dr. Grover Krantz, Dr. Jeff Meldrum, who we already mentioned, Dr. Dmitry Donskoy, Dr. Esteban Sarmiento, Dr. John Napier, and Dr. Henner Fahrenbach, 6 solid pieces of evidence for the Patterson-Gimlin film's authenticity.
The weight of this expert testimony transforms the film from a piece of folklore into a potential scientific document. The video leaves us with a deeply unsettling conclusion, but the evidence presented points to a far more disturbing truth. We can debate the footage forever, but the question remains, what happens when it's not on camera, but standing right in front of you? Meet the creator behind Rocky Mountain Sasquatch, a YouTube channel devoted to exploring the rugged, isolated landscapes of the American West in search of Bigfoot. Expeditions take viewers from forgotten history to modern sightings, diving deep into the heart of the legend. But as he and his companion would soon discover, some myths are rooted in terrifying truths you never want to face.
Jarbidge Mountains are a gateway to a Bigfoot sighting hotspot. Idaho's I had to take a closer look at the history of this very remote forest on the south side of the Sawtooth Mountains. I visit the area to take a good look around for Bigfoot evidence. Here is some of the history that I dug up on Jarbidge.
The journey begins in the Jarbidge Wilderness, nestled on the edge of Idaho's Sawtooth Mountains, an area notorious for Bigfoot sightings. The host sets the stage by recounting the brutal history of the region, including the harrowing survival story of Rita Chrétien, stranded for 47 days in this unforgiving landscape.
There's many legends, Shoshone and Paiute, that come out of the Jarbidge area. It is about a giant, kind of like a ghost story, but maybe it has some relation to Bigfoot. They call it Tusahabits. Tusahabits lived in a rugged, remote canyon. He was a very large and hairy creature. He ate the native Shoshone and Paiute, and so legend has it, they never went into the Jarbidge country.
The true horror of the area emerges through ancient legends. He speaks of Soa Pitsa, a massive, hairy, cannibalistic giant known to the Shoshone and Paiute tribes, one that hunted anyone foolish enough to wander into its territory.
All right, I don't know what that is. Can you see it?
Yeah, you need to get out of the back.
It's sitting there, but I don't know what it is. See, it kind of looks like he's sitting there, like that's his. Does it look like anything to you, or is it just? It just looked like that's its head right there, and that's its body. It's like sitting there. I don't know.
As they scan the rugged mountainside, the camera operator catches sight of a dark, unmoving figure high up on the slope. Its distinct shape, a head, a body, and what appears to be an arm, stands out against the surrounding rocks and trees. A heavy unease settles in as they focus the camera on the strange silhouette, waiting for it to move.
It would have moved by now if it was a Bigfoot sitting there. It looks like his head keeps moving, but the whole thing is shifting.
It does look like the head moves.
I know, it's creepy, huh? That's why I started going, I need a tripod. Should have got up and walked off by now.
Probably.
Yeah. Anyway, it's still interesting, whatever it is.
For several minutes, they hold their breath, filming the still figure. Its shape is unnervingly deliberate, too defined to be a stump or shadow. The host admits his fear, recalling the shock of first seeing it. Despite the distance, its presence is undeniable. They debate its nature, but the longer it remains motionless, the thicker the tension becomes. Is it a creature of immense patience, or just a trick of the light?
I don't know. That'd be so cool if it stood up and started walking away. But it's just still sitting there. Doesn't it look like something sitting there?
It does.
But it hasn't moved. It's just still sitting there.
It even almost seems like a big old gorilla sitting there.
I
That's
know.
his bottom leg and his shoulder and arm and
that's
his
what
head sitting out.
That's why I was like freaking out, because it looked like shiny.
The shape resembles a large primate, like a gorilla, too closely to dismiss. Yet its absolute stillness defies any logic for a living creature. Miles from civilization, deep in a land steeped in dark legends, they find themselves staring at something that shouldn't be there.
There was also a sighting that took place in January 23rd, 1980. The most recent Bigfoot sighting in the fall of 2014, 3 deer hunters were harassed by 3 Bigfoot for 8 nights out of a 9-day hunting trip.
Though they eventually moved on, the mystery of the figure on the hill remains. Was it merely a coincidental rock formation that fooled the eye, or were they being silently observed by a creature that has haunted this wilderness for centuries? Up next, we delve into the terrifying encounters of Tina Sam uploaded on YouTube channel Wildman of the Woods. Around 12:30 a.m., Tina and her friends took a golf cart into the woods to investigate headlights they'd spotted earlier. Deep in the forest, they paused often, scanning the darkness, when a sudden sound from the left shattered the silence.
About a year. It was 12:30 at night. I was sitting on my fire with a female friend of mine. Maybe 45 minutes before that, I had seen headlights up in the woods. So I was like, you guys want to jump on the cart? Let's go up in the woods. And we were talking and we were all kind of looking to the right. And then I hear a twig snap.
Having grown up hunting and fishing, Tina knew instantly that the sharp snap of a twig meant something was there. As she and her friends turned, they saw it, a figure rising from the ground, one hand pressing down as it fluidly stood, then began walking away. The reaction was immediate, instinctive, pure flight.
And my golf cart was moving before I made a conscious thought to move. Like it was just a flight. So in the adrenaline of all this happening, and the passenger didn't see it, so she's like, what just happened? And we're all freaked out, adrenalined up. I passed the only trail I know how to get out of these woods, because like I said, I was only...
Before Tina could process what was happening, her body reacted. In the panic, she missed the only trail she knew, careening through the trees at full speed. When they finally stopped in a bean field, Tina turned to her young friend. Her face was contorted in pure terror as she screamed at Tina to keep going. For months, Tina insisted the creature was human-sized, even telling her research partner as much. It wasn't until 3 months later that the horrifying truth finally sank in.
I frequented back up in the woods a lot, and people would ask me, including my research partner, size-wise, and I said human size, human size. So maybe 3 months later, we happened to be in that part of the woods. I said, hey, while I have you up here, jump off the cart. I'm gonna stop, you jump off the cart, walk over to that tree, she wasn't 10 feet from my cart, and I already knew. My lips kind of stick to my teeth thinking about it, and it was a lot bigger, and to be honest with you, I lied to people for the next year.
The figure she had seen was significantly larger. This realization chilled her to the bone, and for the next year, she couldn't bring herself to return to those woods, making up excuses whenever someone asked to go. Years later, Tina would face something far more insidious while camping deep in the Allegheny National Forest with her friends.
We were camping in the Alleghenies. We were meeting some reporters from the Wall Street Journal. So 5 of us went up, my friend Amy, my friend Monica, my friend Kevin, and if I'm gonna be honest, like the last 10 seconds, I did have a quick flash thought, is that footfall? And then it was rhythmic, so it was doom, doom, and then it went doom, doom, doom. Now mind you, I'm not hearing that.
As she lay on her cot inside her van, miles from civilization in the pitch-black night, she suddenly began to experience an intense, rhythmic pulsing sensation lasted for about 2 minutes before ending with 3 quick pulses.
And I said, well, I was laying there, and all of a sudden, I feel this pulse. And as soon as I say that, Amy and Monica both whipped their heads around, and Amy said, if you remember that part in Jurassic Park with the water glass, and when she said that, I couldn't hear or see. But when she said that, it really resonated because I was like, oh my God, like if I knew what that felt like that was making that water, that could explain what I felt. And it was scary.
These life-altering events propelled Tina to seek answers. She took dozens of reports from seasoned outdoorsmen, many of whom had buried their experiences for years. One story in particular stood out. An elderly hunter in his 70s who saw a Bigfoot standing at his woodline from his window.
He's telling us that he was just standing at his window one day. He's looking out the window and there is a Bigfoot standing there. And there is no doubt in his mind that that's what he's seen. Positively, that was it. It ruined him because hunting and fishing was his Christmas. That's all he did. He was shopping for the stuff and he was in the woods. And he could not get himself to go back in those woods.
The man teared up as he explained that the experience ruined his greatest passion, and he could never bring himself to go back into the woods, eventually selling the property he loved. The mystery of what Tina and others have seen in the woods remains unsolved. But these encounters serve as a powerful reminder that there are still corners of our world that are wild, unknown, and home to things that defy our understanding. Meet the team behind the YouTube channel Small Town Monsters, a crew dedicated to investigating and documenting the strange folklore. This time, one story would draw them deep into the Sierra Nevadas to confront a tale so divisive it has fractured the Sasquatch research community for over a decade, the infamous Sierra. The story begins with Justin Smear, a lifelong hunter from California. In October 2010, he and a friend ventured into a new section of Plumas National Forest, expecting another routine hunt.
And me and my buddy were on a routine hunting trip to a new area in the Sierras, and we encountered what I believe was a Bigfoot. At the end of the day was pretty much wrapping up. The next morning, it was like 4 o'clock in the afternoon. I catch some movement and we see it at the same time. We're driving and I look and I see a hairy object. I see I thought it was a bear. And then I look and then I see what was a Bigfoot. I mean, I don't know how to describe it any other way.
The day had been unusually successful, with sightings of deer and other wildlife drawn to bait in a nearby meadow. But as they approached the site, their expectations were shattered by an encounter that would alter the course of their lives forever. As they spotted movement, it wasn't the bear they were expecting.
Maybe 10 seconds go by, we're talking a couple different things, and then it does this, then it decides, I think that it's seen the rifle too much, because I'm like pointing out the window, my buddy's like, don't shoot, don't shoot, don't, and so it's right here, so it turns, because it's like, we knew it was about to run off, and it was getting nervous. It turns, and I shot it right here.
Justin spotted a large, hairy, upright figure, Bigfoot, in all its unsettling form. Justin's heart raced as he aimed his rifle, and he fired. The shock of the moment was quickly replaced by something far more disturbing. Two smaller juvenile creatures appeared, trailing the wounded adult. The large figure disappeared from view, leaving Justin and his friend to watch the confused young ones, calling out to each other in eerie, unnatural tones.
And he's like, what the f did you do? And I was like, and I'm like having a moment, and he's like, what did you do? He's like, look at it. And then I toss it like right over, and he comes down and it's just sitting there and it hits his feet. He's standing right here. I was like, I don't know if we said anything. I was like, well, what do we do now?
Driven by the need for undeniable proof, he made a fateful choice. He shot one of the small creatures. When his friend returned, horrified by his actions, they argued in panic. With no time to waste, they hastily buried the body under logs, branches, and rocks, planning to return the next day to retrieve it.
And so I brought it right here and put it right here. I probably did something like this, and like it created a hole. They were moving stuff. I was using the butt of the gun. Then we grabbed a bunch of stuff and we put it over it. Like big stuff. It's not like, I mean, we hid it as much as you could hide it in 15 minutes.
Their plan was immediately thwarted. A massive storm swept through the Sierras, dumping several feet of snow and making the roads impassable.
So when we dug here, we dug there, we dug there. We didn't even know, like we could see like tops of the bush. We had no idea if we were like here or all the way over there where you see, because the snow, it was white. It just all looked the same. It's literally this high after 1 week in the snow, like 3 feet dumping at this.
And these all these bushes were here back then.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. This alder farm thing, it all looked the same.
Weeks turned into a month before they could return, and when they did, the landscape was unrecognizable. Despite digging for hours, they found nothing but a small sample of hair and flesh. Desperate for answers, Justin shared his story on a taxidermy forum, sparking a firestorm and drawing the attention of Bigfoot researchers.
I'm a taxidermist, hunting guide, bear hunter. Justin made a post on a taxidermy forum at a time when I was really into finding out as much as I could about Bigfoot and Sasquatch. I was quite early in my search, actually. Suddenly, Justin, and I can't remember his username at the time, but he chimed in and says, well, you guys might want to call bullshit, he said, but I shot one.
In July 2011, a full-scale expedition was launched, with researchers like Derek Randalls, Bart Cutino, and Dr. Jeff Meldrum joined Justin at the site, eager to uncover the truth. Despite a meticulous multi-day search of the entire area,
it was actually kind of uncanny. It was almost exactly the way that Justin described it. You know how you get this perception in your brain when somebody's telling you a story and they lay it out for you and you kind of see it, you visualize it. It was almost exactly like I visualized. So we excavated the mound of dirt and we actually spent probably 8 hours looking through that area where he had said that they had placed the small one under a bush, to no avail. We looked very hard and found nothing.
The expedition found nothing. No bones, no remains, no definitive evidence of the events Justin described. Experts on the team noted that in a forest environment teeming with predators, a carcass wouldn't last long, making the lack of discovery disappointing, but not entirely surprising.
There's cougars, there's bears. So just to say, if this thing would have been shot and bleeding, it would have been putting off a scent. It would have been laying there and it probably wouldn't have been more than a day before some predator would have grabbed it. So it wasn't a big shock to me that it wasn't there. But we did, like I said, we looked vigorously. We looked for blood, we looked for bone, we looked for hair, we looked for anything that could be associated with it.
The failure to find a body, combined with the shocking nature of the claim, left the story in a state of permanent limbo, fueling endless debate online.
I never actually went back to the kill site, but I will say that when I was there, I did my due diligence. We looked extremely well through the area.
We definitely didn't want to take a picture and get caught for what we had done, for what I did.
Was this a hunter's terrifying encounter with an unknown creature, leading to a rash decision? Or was it something else entirely? The lack of a body leaves the story as haunting folklore, whispered among researchers and enthusiasts. One thing is certain, Justin Smager's account forces us to confront a chilling reality. If these creatures exist, the first undeniable proof might not come from a photo, but from the barrel of a gun. The woods hide many secrets, and some are darker than we can fathom. The YouTube channel Mountain Beast Mysteries has always stood apart for one reason: patience. Its creator has spent years walking the forgotten trails of the Canadian wilderness, searching for traces of something few believe and even fewer have seen. And over time, he's found things that keep that question alive. Footprints that don't belong to anything easily explained. He began this journey back in 2013, filming his first Bigfoot documentary. Since then, it's been years of cold hikes, long nights, and quiet moments in deep woods where the world feels untouched. In that time, he's only come across a handful of tracks that might belong to Sasquatch, a reminder of just how rare and fragile this search really is. He admits, not a single one made it to plaster. Out there, miles from any road, carrying casting materials just isn't practical, and sometimes the ground doesn't cooperate. Moss too soft, snow too loose. But he's seen enough to keep looking, enough to wonder.
This right here looks like a naked human-like footprint. I don't know how it's gonna turn up on there, but this looks like a heel. It kind of narrows out here, and it looks like toes. I mean, I'd say it's probably 12 inches only 12 or 13 inches. But if this is from a Bigfoot, it's the first track I've ever found.
The first track he ever found was simple: a bare, human-like footprint pressed deep into moss. It had a clear heel, the arch of a foot, even the faint suggestion of toes, only about 12 inches long, yet different, wider, deeper, not something you could mistake for a shoe or boot. He set his glasses down beside it for scale, realizing it was nearly double their width, just one track, lonely and distinct. Nearby, he also found the heavy impressions of grizzly paws, clear, deep, and fresh. Whatever had passed through that valley had come close, maybe even in the night before. It reminded him that these places are not empty. They're alive, layered with predators, prey, and mysteries still walking between.
Like, look how deep that is. So something was definitely walking through here very recently. Yeah, like it could have been last night, that noise we heard. I mean, this one, like that's a pretty big paw, and they just keep going. I don't think we should follow those. That's pretty close.
Years later, in another part of the backcountry, he found more snow tracks, long strides, 3.5 feet apart, too far for any human to make with natural gait. Each print pressed deep, perfectly spaced, weaving through fences and trees as if a large bipedal creature had crossed through in silence. The snow rubbed clean in spots where something brushed past. He called his partner down for reference. The size was striking. Whatever it was walked upright, left, right, left, not the hop or bound of an animal, and the direction of those steps led straight toward the area where he had once left apples as an offering. The connection lingered in his mind. Maybe coincidence, maybe not. Some prints looked almost textbook. A defined heel, a raised middle ridge, what Bigfoot researchers call the mid-tarsal break, a small detail that some believe separates primate movement from human. Still, he stayed grounded. He knew that certainty doesn't come easy in this field. Each find has to be measured with reason, patience, and humility.
These are bipedal tracks. Like, this is from something walking on two legs. There's no doubt about that.
And then it goes over here and then down.
Something's been coming through this fence.
Yeah, and then I was like, well, then it goes down towards the fence, and that's where I put the apples up, over there.
Not every print was mysterious. Some turned out to be human. Others, tricks of the mud, marks left by slipping boots or melting snow. But every discovery carried weight. Because in this search, truth hides in the smallest details. The curve of a heel, the depth of a step, the silence that follows. Maybe not often, maybe not clearly, but enough to keep him going back, enough to remind him that the mystery still walks among us.
That looks good.
So I was just coming down the trail from that way, going this way, and there's an impression here in the ground. Now, if you look at it, like it's pretty big. It's about 2.5 of these cameras long.
The YouTube channel Renaissance Man has always been about raw, unfiltered outdoor life. The kind that brings peace and challenge in equal measure. But this trip to Harrison Lake felt different. What started as a calm family camping adventure slowly unfolded into something he could never quite explain. He had camped here before, among the mountains that rise like ancient walls, and the calm lake that mirrors the sky. But this time, he brought his family along, ready for a quiet escape. The air smelled of pine and wet sand, the kind of air that makes you breathe slower. The day began easily, a bike ride through rough trails, setting up camp beside the water, and organizing the truck for the night ahead. Everything felt right, until morning came. That's when he noticed them. Tracks. Large, wide prints pressed deep into the sand just outside their tent, the kind that made him stop mid-sentence. He knew his own footprints, his wife's too, but these were different. He crouched, tracing the outline with his fingers, realizing they didn't match anything human. "That's the toe print," he said quietly to himself. "That's not human." By the time he came back with his camera, the lake had risen. The prints were washing away.
Print from the Sasquatch. I'm not joking here, folks. That's not a human's toe print there. Like I said, there's another one way up here, which has been trampled and gone now. And then the next, it jumped up onto that log. Bugs are getting thick. I'm sorry. I didn't get the full footprint.
It was disappointing. Evidence lost to water and footsteps. But what unsettled him most wasn't just the prints. It was the feeling that something had been standing there, watching, close enough to touch the fabric of the tent. He stepped outside with a flashlight. The campfire had burned low. Then, footsteps, slow, heavy, moving away from the tent. Every instinct told him not to follow. His wife and baby were inside. The footsteps faded, but the chill stayed.
Heard someone walking right here. When I was first over here, listening for the rock throw again.
In the morning light, he walked the beach again. More small prints, wide, flat, spaced just far enough apart to seem strange. He followed them to a fallen log wedged high between two trees, at least 10 feet off the ground. It didn't make sense. The tree had clearly been cut, but how it got placed there was a mystery.
Just found these. None of that's smaller than my footprint, my wife's footprint, and it's pretty wide too. I don't know if you can get that. It's pretty sunny here.
The fear softened. They swam, played, and tried to shake off the night. Yet the sense of being watched never fully left. Even as the sun warmed the sand and laughter filled the air, something felt close. That night, the sound of breaking branches came again, sharp and sudden. He didn't chase it this time. He just stood there, listening to the waves move against the rocks, feeling that quiet truth settle in. Some places hold more than nature. Maybe it was curiosity, maybe a warning, or maybe, just maybe, something ancient came down to the lake to see who had entered its world. The team from Animal Planet's Finding Bigfoot has traveled to many remote corners of North America, but this time, they chose an unexpected place: Southern California. Just beyond the noise of Los Angeles, deep in the San Bernardino Mountains, people have been reporting strange encounters for years. Bigfoot sightings in a region so close to the city seemed unlikely. Yet, as the team soon discovered, the wild doesn't always hide where you expect it to. Researcher Matt Moneymaker led the investigation, joined by Bobo Fay, Ranai Holland, and Cliff Barackman. Their mission began with a witness, a man named Raymond, who claimed he'd seen a large, hairy creature cross a highway near Big Bear.
Even though we're not that far from LA, this environment is very good for Sasquatches, and Raymond's sighting only supports that.
To most, it would sound impossible. But when Matt left the road and walked down into the valley below, everything changed. The land grew quiet, the air heavier, and the sense of isolation set in. It was the kind of place, he said, where a Sasquatch could thrive, plenty of cover and water, and few humans ever venturing here. As night fell, Matt decided to camp there. The team spread out, ready to test the area with vocal calls and sound responses.
Here's where we'll do it from. And it's time to howl again.
On our first night, we didn't hear any coyotes, which was very disheartening because Bigfoots and coyotes often live in the same areas.
The next day brought a news story. A young woman named Honey, who as a child had seen something she couldn't explain while driving with her family near Big Bear Lake. Her father claimed to have seen 4 of them, tall shapes moving under the trees. Honey only saw one, but the image never left her mind. She described it as standing out in the open sunlight, tall and wide, at least 8 feet high. When asked if she thought it could have been a person, she paused, unsure, but leaning toward what her father had always said. It could have been a Sasquatch, she admitted softly.
Boy, this is a long ways from Big Bear Lake.
It is.
This is where it all happened then, I'm assuming. But let me get this straight. Your father actually is the one who initially saw them, is that right?
Yeah, my dad saw 4, but I saw 1 of the 4. Me, my brother, and my father, we were driving. My dad, he suddenly said, look over there. And I look over and I'm like, whoa.
Later, Bobo and Rane met another witness, Michael Crawford, who had experienced 2 separate encounters high in the mountains. He described hearing strange howls echoing through the night, then silence, followed by rocks being thrown at his car. When he returned the next evening, it happened again. He felt surrounded, as if something unseen was warning him to leave. Ranae tried to stay skeptical, but even she couldn't deny how unnerving the story sounded. Back in the field, Matt continued exploring the dry slopes, searching for signs near Deep Creek, one of the few places with steady water in those mountains. He believed if Bigfoot lived there, it would stay close to that source. The landscape was harsh, the air dry, and yet the signs of life, bent branches, faint trails, whispered that something larger might be moving through. Even in Southern California, so close to millions of people, there are still corners of wilderness untouched by light. And maybe, just maybe, something ancient still walks there, silent, hidden, watching from the trees. The video comes from the YouTube channel The Bigfoot Conundrum. In it, a man from Taney County, deep in the Ozark Hills of Missouri, opens up about a mystery that has followed him for years. His story doesn't begin with fear or disbelief, but with quiet confusion and a growing sense that something else shared his land. He lives far from the main road, surrounded by thick woods and long valleys where deer move at dusk. For him, this land was peace, open sky, the smell of pine, and the sound of water winding through the low ground. But over time, the quiet began to change. It started in the 1990s. One night, he heard a sound that didn't belong. Deep, rolling calls echoing through the hills. Then came another voice, and another, each from a different direction. He described them as coordinated, almost like a conversation carried by the wind. At first, he thought it might be animals, coyotes maybe, but the tones were too low, too human, the pattern too deliberate. As the weeks went by, the calls returned, sometimes at sunset, sometimes in the middle of the night, always distant, always watching. Then came the footprints.
It was what he saw that made him wonder who or what was crossing his land.
We found footprints that are anywhere from 12 inches to 17 inches long. They're all pressed into leaf mold, so we haven't been able to get a successful cast yet.
And he has proof.
That's when we found a picture about that time on my game camera from down there in the corner.
He found them pressed into soft leaf mold near the edge of the woods. Prints far larger than any man's, some reaching up to 17 inches long. The impressions were deep, as if whatever made them carried enormous weight. He tried to cast them, but the forest floor crumbled under the pressure of time and weather. Still, he knew what he saw. The moment that changed everything came one quiet night outside his home. He stepped out with a flashlight, batteries weak, the beam dull, and swept the light toward the trees 50 feet away. That's when he saw them, two glowing eyes wide apart reflecting back through the dark. They moved slowly, side to side, then disappeared behind a tree too small to hide something that size. In 6 strides, whatever it was vanished into the valley. That night, the man says, his doubt vanished with it. He began keeping a record, photos, recordings, notes of every strange noise and broken branch. He studied what others had seen, talked with the Bigfoot Field Researchers Organization, and learned that Missouri, especially the Ozarks, has been a quiet hub of sightings for more than a century. Reports go back to the 1800s, old newspapers once describing a wild man of the Ozark Mountains.
And you can see we're talking 50 feet away, and that's where it was. When its eyes came out, they were setting off at an angle like this because he was doing this.
Yeah.
And then back around behind the tree. Well, the tree wasn't nearly big enough for him. He was bigger than the tree.
Yeah.
See, we're talking 50 feet away, and that's where it was. And it went bum, 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 bum.
Right there.
It was right there. In 6 steps, it cleared the edge of the property. It was gone.
Robinson now has a collection of photographs and recordings he claims are proof.
Even now, researchers like Ron Bowles with the BFRO confirm new encounters every year across Missouri and Arkansas. Today, the man's land has grown quiet again. The calls no longer echo across the valley. Sometimes, he says, he misses them. That strange presence that once felt both near and distant, real and unreal. He doesn't call it fear anymore, just mystery.
Kansas City Star, New York Times, about the wild man of the Ozarks.
Robinson says the activity around his house has calmed down over the years, and he misses his Bigfoot.
But this guy was just a voice in the dark, and when he's gone, you feel a little bit like, yeah, he's part of it, and I would like to see him.
Tomorrow night, the debate rages on. Is there really a Bigfoot in the Ozarks?
This presence of a possible...
Something ancient that passed through his life and left its mark in silence. Whether it was a legend come to life or something we still can't explain, one truth remains. In the deep valleys of the Ozarks, there are still places where the unknown walks softly, just beyond the trees. The YouTube channel DMAX UK is known for its bold explorations into the unknown. But one discovery stood out, a photograph of a hand that might have belonged to something extraordinary. It began when Bryce received an unusual picture. Someone had found what appeared to be a human-like hand, covered in hair, yet ending in claws. Bryce looked closely at the image and said quietly, "I've never heard of Bigfoot having claws, but that certainly looks like a human, hairy hand."
He goes on to say, "I threw it back into the woods, but it wasn't until then that I realized what I may have had in my possession." I've never heard any cases or people describing Bigfoot with claws, but that certainly looks like a human hairy hand. I think this is worth showing to the team.
He decided to share it with the rest of the team. When they saw the photo, their reactions were a mix of surprise and confusion. But the claws changed everything. Primate hands don't have claws, they have nails. This was something else entirely. Bryce asked his teammate Ronnie if he had ever heard of Bigfoot stories describing claws. Ronnie said that accounts were mixed. Some people claimed Bigfoot's hands looked human, while others swore they had claws for protection or climbing. No one really knew. The mystery deepened, and Bryce decided more research was needed.
Whoa.
What?
Yeah, strange, right?
If you stop short of the claws, it actually looks like a human hand.
Yeah.
But then primates don't have claws. We have fingernails.
Do you think that could be a bear?
Or a wolf or a coyote?
We're thinking this thing is bigger than what it is. This could be a raccoon's hand, right?
If you look at the knot
In the
on the
bag.
plastic bag, it gives you a slight reference. So it does look big.
The crew moved into the forest, following a faint trail that looked like something large had passed through recently. As they walked, they looked for signs, footprints, broken branches, or even nests. Researchers believe Bigfoot may build two types of structures: nests made of woven branches and tree formations bent and arranged in strange patterns. These, some say, could be markers or signs of communication.
These are large branches, or sometimes entire trees arranged in unnatural patterns. Oftentimes they appear like teepees, but have been reported to take on a variety of shapes. There are several theories as to what purpose they serve.
When it comes to tree structures, there's some different schools of thought. A lot of researchers, including myself, believe they're a form of communication. These are almost like road signs.
Then came a smell, sharp, musky, like wet fur. One of them whispered, "That's bear." The team froze. They realized they might have wandered too close to a bear den hidden in the rocks. For a moment, the mission shifted from mystery to survival. Still, the question lingered in everyone's mind. What was that hand? Human, animal, or something that lives hidden in the woods, just out of reach, waiting to be found?
As I got closer, that smell got real strong.
Yeah.
We seem to have stumbled upon a bear den on the trail, and it has me on high alert.
I'm waiting for something to pop up right behind those rocks.
We've been at this for hours here.
Yeah.
And this trail seems to go on forever. We are up against an incredibly dense population of black bears here, and we can see that this trail goes on for miles and miles. Why don't we call it a night? It's just too dangerous. Can't keep going.
In the wide, empty spaces of the Southwest, silence carries its own kind of presence. On this cold January afternoon, that silence was broken by something unexpected, a moment that would change what one woman believed about the world around her. This story comes from the YouTube channel J.C. Johnson, where field researcher J.C. sits down with a local witness named Alex, calm, clear-eyed, still trying to understand what she saw that day. It happened just after 4:30 in the afternoon on January 4th. The light was still soft, the snow fresh on the ground. Alex had taken her small electric four-wheeler out for a ride with her dogs, a simple winter habit. They ran ahead through the brush, chasing scents, until suddenly they came bolting back down the hill, all of them, except one. She slowed the Polaris, scanning the tree line. Then she saw movement, a tall shape behind a massive tree. At first, she thought it was another dog, or maybe a person, but it didn't move like either. Her dogs froze, began to whimper, then scattered. And then, just ahead of her, standing 8 feet away, were 3 enormous figures. The largest towered at nearly 12 feet, dark and solid, with shoulders as broad as a doorway. Beside it stood a second, around 10 feet tall, and a third, smaller, reddish in color, about 8 feet high. They weren't hiding, they stood in plain view.
Around, and I was running my dog Zor,
Mhm.
and he was running all over the place as usual, and I thought he was in front of me, but then all of a sudden all the dogs came running down from the hill, and then whatever was in front of me was still right there behind the really big tall tree. And I was really shocked because I didn't know what it was. It kept moving, and all of a sudden it stopped, and then I kept driving without thinking, and finally the two dogs, one of my sister's dogs and my other dog, they just stopped in front of me, and it made me stop the Polaris.
Alex describes their faces as part human, part gorilla. The nose flat but structured, the eyes alive and aware. The smallest one, the reddish figure, reached down toward her missing dog, Zor. It made a soft whistling sound through its teeth, and the dog walked straight to it. Then, gently, the creature bent low and scratched behind Zor's ear. The dog flopped to the ground, relaxed, as if greeting an old friend. That's when Alex remembered something her family had noticed weeks before. How Zor's chain had been found surrounded by T-bone bones, steaks left neatly beside him. Whatever these beings were, they had been visiting, feeding him. As Alex sat frozen on her four-wheeler, her hands turned white against the steering wheel. She couldn't move, couldn't speak. She just stared. 2 full minutes of silence, of disbelief, of awe and fear blending together.
Like 3 different times.
3 different times they
Yeah.
found bones there with them. Now, when you started staring at them, how long were you staring at them, and then what caused you to turn around and head back?
I stared at them for like about 2 minutes at the most, and then my hands were starting to turn white. I was really scrunching the steering wheel of the Polaris because they're a lot more bigger than me, obviously,
Yeah.
and I didn't know what to do, and I just stood there like kind of shocked, just staring at them because they were 8 feet in front of me.
Then, the smallest one stood upright. The middle figure shifted forward a step. That was enough. Her body woke up, instinct took over, and she threw the machine in reverse, backing away fast, leaving Zor behind for only a moment. When she reached home, her mother looked at her pale face and asked what happened. All Alex could say was, 3 big guys. Her mother nodded slowly and said, "My hairy boys." Later, when she was calm enough to speak, Alex admitted something. She wasn't afraid anymore. They hadn't harmed her. They hadn't even seemed angry, just curious, watching, and sometimes that's the part that stays with you the longest. Not the fear, but the knowing that something else is out there, and it saw you too. And that's it for today's video. After seeing these 6 creepy Bigfoot trail cam encounters, it's clear that the mystery of Bigfoot is far from solved. Whether these creatures are truly out there, or if something else is responsible, one thing is certain. The woods are full of secrets, and some of them may be far darker than we can imagine.